I ran the math on this. Get ready. Less than 3% of women mentioned penis size. When it came to the men who were good in bed, 0% mentioned the man having a good body. Less than 5% talked about him staying hard. 0% talked about how much money he made, the kind of car he drove, etc., the outer trappings. But what a lot of them talked about was he built up the anticipation. So, for example, we're talking about arousal for 45 minutes. If you come up behind your woman in the kitchen and like squeeze her butt a little bit and like kiss her neck and then walk away, right? Well, now she might be a little aroused. Or if you give her a really good compliment and you're looking in her eyes and you're grounded and you're present when you say it, you look great in those jeans. Oh, well, now her little neurons are going to be firing.
Melanie is a relationship coach for men and couples and a sex researcher with a master's degree from Stanford University. She hosts the popular podcast, Dear Men, How to Rock Sex, Dating, and Relationships with Women. And that's the podcast I've been on a couple of times with you. Now, I took something off of something I read on your website, and I'm going to read this as maybe not so much your bio, but an introduction. You write, I'm quoting you, I'm on a mission to make it easier for men to learn about how to please real women in bed. Not only because it's a lot more pleasurable for us women than what's happening, than when that's happening, but because I want men to get what they want. I want them to have lit up, turned on, radiant women in their lives. I want them to be able to sexually satisfy women such that women are begging them for sex. And there's guys out there going, what world does that happen in? But I can attest, since I got divorced in my late 40s, every woman I've been with, including the woman I've been married to for 8 years, have all wanted more sex than me. They, I hate to say it, but they begged and you know, until they get their pride back, and then they just whine. So, Melanie, what inspired you to become a sexologist? What was
Oh,
that
that's,
about?
by the way, your version of my bio was better than my version of my bio. I was much
Well,
more compelling.
I still read that you wrote that. So, I mean, I'm still reading something you wrote. So,
Right. But that was more juicy than what I picked. So
all
thanks.
right.
Thanks for doing that. Um, yeah, so I am a sex researcher, and actually, my path is that I worked at an org to stop sexual abuse in my 20s. And that was primarily actually in the Orthodox Jewish community. And we were mostly working with boys and young men. And that was most of my background. So I worked in sexual abuse, and then I realized that we're only going to be able to tackle that issue if we establish a healthy sexual culture overall, right? We need to
Mhm.
be talking about it. It needs to be more open. We all need to be just more open in general. Otherwise, it tends to get relegated to secrecy, and in the dark, things fester. So that's my background. And I am a passionate advocate for survivors of sexual abuse and all of the thriving that can happen on the other side of that. I think we only ever hear about that in terms of victimization, but actually, I think you can come out even stronger and have an even better sex life as a survivor. And I'm, again, including men and women in that demographic, because I think a lot of times we only hear about women, but there's a lot of men that are survivors too. So I know that's not, maybe the sexiest way to get started, but that was my path, and I became really passionate about it. And then I had a lot of curiosity myself, and I kind of went along with that for my research.
Okay. Yeah. As a marriage and family therapist, for 40 years, um, yeah, I've listened to a lot of stories from men and women both. And, it seems like a lot of the work I've done, whether it's with married people, single people, sex is always, in the middle of what's kind of going on in their lives. We're sexual creatures. We're all about sex. And I often say that we're all bound to get messed up sexually. We live in a very puritanical world It's easy to say it's just Western culture, but I think Eastern culture is maybe even more repressed than even Western culture. So we still, have all these taboos around sex. I grew up fundamental Christian. Basically, the message was sex is dirty, evil, and sinful. So save it for the one you love. So what led you to going from art? You're working with people around sexual abuse issues. What led you to start doing sexual research and asking people about their sex lives?
Yeah, so I'm a writer and I publish online in various places. And I basically just wanted to satisfy some of my own curiosity. I don't know if any of you have heard of the term me searcher, but researchers who are focused on something they're curious about sometimes call themselves me searchers. That would be me. And one of the research questions that I was interested in was how many men are good in bed? Because I was, a sexually active woman. I had a lot of experiences with men, and I was curious about whether my experience was unique or whether other women were having a similar experience. And that was one of my primary research articles. And I was also interested in kind of like both sexes, all sexes, really. Everyone responded to my research. I got over 3,000 participants to my research. I was also interested in what are your top three sex problems? What are your top three dating problems? What are your top three relationship problems? So I got a bunch of data from all of those surveys and I parsed all of the data. And then I kind of went from there in terms of where my curiosity went. But the research results were very interesting. And I think that one of the things that inspires me is the compassion that's available when we hear each other's stories. Because
Hmm.
there's, I think, especially for hetero folks or folks who are having sex with the opposite gender, because we're not having the same lived experience in the world, it's just inherently harder to understand the other side. And then when you add hurt and trauma onto that, there can be like I call it a divide. There's often a divide that will show up in the research, which I can get to, but it's sort of like I only understand my side and I don't really understand your side, and vice versa. And I've found that the more compassion that's brought in and the more light, like we're talking about, bringing the light of knowledge and the light of understanding helps a lot. So I can share some of my research findings if that's interesting, because I think some of them
I
are
I
pretty
would
eye-opening.
love that. A certain percentage of your female respondents to some certain research, I'll put this out there and then I want to hear more of what you found, basically said only about 10% of men are good in bed. So in other words,
Yes.
you're saying the majority of us, 90%, are either clumsy or lazy lovers. We're not very good at it.
I wouldn't say lazy. That lazy was not a word that showed up in the research, but
Just
I would,
clumsy then.
yeah, maybe clumsy. I think that the one of the things I really want to impress upon all of you listening is that the bar is very low, and that's good for you because it means,
Meaning women don't have very high expectations of us?
well, it what I mean is, um, okay, I'm just gonna get into some of it. So when I asked men and women, what are your top three problems in when it comes to sex? What a lot of men said was, I'm hungry. I need more. The word more came up a lot. I need more. I'm not getting enough. And these were both men that weren't in relationships and men that were in relationships. And then another thing that came up a lot was, I feel like I'm always the one initiating. If I don't, we won't. That was one of the research quotes. So there's this experience of kind of hunger and lack on the men's side. And I got research respondents across the board, but for the purposes of this, I'm going to be talking mostly about men who have sex with women and women who have sex with men. So on women's side, the number two problem was trouble orgasming. I have trouble coming to orgasm. I have trouble climaxing. The number one problem for women was pain. And when I say pain, I don't just mean pain during intercourse, which is what a lot of people think of when we think of pain during sex. I feel like when we say the word sex, sometimes we mean the word intercourse, but sex is really broader than that. It's not just intercourse. So, and this was part of the reason I wanted to do the research was because I had had so many sexual experiences with men where it didn't feel good. it actually hurt. And when I say it hurt, for example, the way that he was touching me with his hands. I mean, we use the word fingering. To me, that almost sounds a little bit violent. Like fingering, it feels like jabbing, which was, by the way, a big word that a lot of the women talked about in my research. When I did the actual survey for this, I asked them, what are the top three things men did that were not good in bed? And what are the top three things that men were good in bed? What did they do? So I had the contrast, right? And I think the pain thing is a big deal for two reasons. One, because if you're not experiencing pleasure, if it actually hurts to do something, you're probably going to want to do it less, right? You're going to want to do
And
it
you're going to
less.
be all tight, and that's going to even make things worse. You want to be open and relaxed.
Yes, exactly. And then the other reason that that's important is that it's actually pretty fixable. It's actually pretty fixable. It's very
That's good
doable.
news.
And what's interesting is that when it comes to sex and communication, I think that we have a lot of like when I did the research, one of the things that I asked was, with no sugarcoating, what do you wish you could have told a previous partner about the sex? So this is a little bit of a confessional, right? It's like, no sugarcoating. You don't have to make it pretty. Just tell me. And it's anonymous, right? It's an anonymous survey on the internet. There's no reason for people to lie. And here's what happened. A lot of the men said things like this. I need her to tell me what she likes, what she needs. Tell me what feels good and what doesn't. What am I doing wrong? Show me how to do it right or how you like it. Take my hand, take my penis, show me. What am I doing? Tell me while I'm having sex with you so that I won't stop or move. And then what do you think the women were saying? So this is, what do you wish you could have told a previous partner about the sex? They said, about my likes and needs. Basically, everything that are my needs. How I wanted to be touched or how to touch. Be more specific about what I want and, more important, what I don't. How to please me. And this was interesting because for any of you out there that do research, you probably know that one of the most interesting things about research is the emergence factor, right? Things that emerge that you didn't expect. So maybe you had a hypothesis, maybe you didn't. But this was a very obvious divide between these two populations. One side, the women were saying, I wish I could tell you what I need. And the other side is like, I wish you could tell me what you need. Like, I'm trying to figure it out. I'm just like hoping what I'm doing is working. I don't really know. You're kind of hard to read. I'm not really sure. And what I do in my work is I help men invite her forward, invite her to share, invite her in. Because what I think there's this sort of like assumption, oh, well, the solution to this is really easy. Women should speak up. Women should just speak up more, right? Women should just, well, if it hurts, she'll tell me. I can tell you as a sex researcher, she won't tell you. It's actually really likely that she will just
Why,
grin
why,
and
why is that? Why would the woman not say, I don't like that, please stop?
yeah, so I have the research on this, Robert. Um,
Why is it? Tell us.
basically they're afraid. And this was me. So I had countless, I have a whole talk on this and we can't go into all the details, but I tell my own personal story about this. But there are basically four reasons why it's so scary. It's so hard for a woman to speak up about either it working or not working. It can be either or, but it's harder to speak up when it hurts, when it's not working. And one of them is I was afraid if I said, oh, that hurts, I would like you to do it, with less pressure with your fingers. I was afraid he would say, oh, you don't like how I do it? Well, fuck you then. I don't have to do it at all.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
I
pretty
was
all or
really afraid.
nothing.
And a lot of women said that. But what more women said was, I'm afraid he'll withdraw, right? If he feels criticized or something isn't feeling good for him that he hears from me, he'll just slowly back
Men
away.
men never do that. Men never pull away and pout and then punish you because we perceive you criticized us. So that probably just has to happen once or twice to a woman and she goes, I won't say anything.
Yes. And it doesn't even have to happen about something sexual, right? That's kind of what I thought was interesting about the subject was when I asked people, both sexes, when I said, because one of my questions was, if something wasn't working for you during sex, did you speak up? If not, why not? And a lot of people said, no, I didn't speak up. And when they were asked about why, they said, well, I didn't want to hurt his feelings.
Yeah.
I didn't want to hurt her feelings. And these deeper reasons that I'm going over now are what underlie that, right? Most people come in with, I didn't want to hurt their feelings. But if you ask them why, what would happen if you hurt their feelings? There are these underlying fears. So one, she's afraid that she'll be attacked. Two, she's afraid that you'll just withdraw and she'll lose you. She'll lose the relationship. She'll lose, the stakes are high, especially if she likes you, right? You're actually sometimes less likely to get the truth unless you're inviting it out, which we'll get to. For her to speak up, that's a huge risk on her part. She doesn't want to lose you. She doesn't want to lose the connection. And the third reason is that she has been told that she's broken. That was a word that came up a lot on the women's side that didn't come up on the men's side. A lot of women are concerned that they're broken. Again, we come back to trouble orgasming. Maybe they've never been able to orgasm with a partner. They don't know why, or they feel like they don't like sex. Maybe they have sexual trauma that's not been healed. They feel like they're broken. So they're afraid that's going to come up. And then the last reason is actually not about something bad. It's more about wanting to keep your respect. So there was a really interesting quote in the research about this woman said, I find it a lot easier to speak up with a fling than a relationship partner because I don't care what my fling thinks of me, and I don't want my relationship partner to think I'm a trashy whore. So if there's something that she wants or something that she likes, she's afraid to tell you because she wants to keep your respect. And we come back to that puritanical thing that you mentioned.
Yeah.
I had many experiences in my life of feeling like I could either have a man's respect or I could have sex.
And
And that
what is
was really true, but I felt like it was true. And I have a compelling example once. I chose not to hook up with a guy, and I heard him talking to my housemates later, and he said, Mel is a lady. Mel is a lady. And I thought to myself, he said that because I chose not to have sex with him last night. And that reinforced the belief in me, the programming, if I have sex with a man, he'll lose respect for me. So there's a lot of complexity, but the bottom line is that it's really hard for women to cross the divide. That's what I call it, that divide. It's really hard for women to cross the divide. We need your help to come across and kind of invite us forward and bring us over, because it's very scary.
couple of observations and thoughts. One is, I won't go too deep in this, but it really reflects what you just said, that I found working with a lot of men around sexuality, without going too deep, I do really think the Oedipal complex has a lot of truth to it. The boys go through phases of wanting to possess their mothers, and they wanting, mother to think that they're, great. So boys, like, at some stage will go, grab mommy's breast or dance around with her pee-pee or grab mom's butt. And depending on how mom responds to that, boys often internalize basically the Madonna whore syndrome, that good women don't like sex. That you hide your sex from good women. You only bring your sex to the bad women. And how that often plays out is men will go look at porn. They might go to massage parlors. They might pick up hookers, and there they'll go be sex. But with a woman they really like, that they might think they want, I got to impress her. She's a good woman. I know, I'll hide my sexuality from her. And then like, if the woman's trying to be the good girl as well, all of a sudden that can't go well.
Yeah.
So the other piece, and I'm going to give a talk on this at our conference in Playa del Carmen, of, I call it, how to drive a sexual Ferrari. And my just from an evolutionary biology kind of way, women are the most sexually evolved creatures on the planet. But we men have tend to make sex costly for you in various ways. And I say that women are sexual Ferraris, men are sexual mopeds. For a man, if we just can find a hole to stick our dick in and ejaculate, we go, that was good. Was that good for you? Doesn't matter what hole. It could be a tree stump. It could be a sheep. It doesn't matter. Men do that. But women aren't like that. We're poking you. We're putting things into your body. We're putting our parts in your parts. And as you say, it can be painful. It can be invasive. It can be traumatic. It can be abusive. And so one of the things I do with men is try to help them understand just the complexity, the beautiful complexity of female sexuality, all the parts on your body that can trigger orgasm, your varied and expansive fantasy life that we men don't come anywhere close to. And so there's one piece is understanding you better. But it sounds like you've got some information that can help us grow from just being sexual mopeds, one dimensional, stick our dick in a hole, ejaculate, and call that sex. So you found some things that are actually help men show up in less mopedish ways with women to give women more pleasure, and women want to keep coming back when they get pleasure. So tell us more about that. Every guy listening to this, what are some takeaways that they can take to the bedroom? Somebody said they wanted to find the bedroom. All right, give us some takeaways.
Well, also, I briefly also wanted to say that I do feel like safety is just as important to men as it is to women, and I mean in a sexual context. I've worked with men for over a decade now, and I think one of the main things that I've taken away from that is that many of my clients have said, yeah, I can't have sex unless I feel connected to the woman I'm with.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not
Yeah.
even getting hard. I need to feel connected to her to get aroused, and I need to feel safe in order to actually have great sex. So I think that's important to normalize, because I do think that there's a way that our culture kind of denigrates men or says they only want sex, or they only want one thing, or they're, pigs or dogs or things like that. That has not been my experience with the vast majority of men that I've worked with. And I think it's a disservice that we do to men to kind of say, well, safety is only important to women. No, safety is important to
Yeah.
both. It's going to
Yeah.
look and feel different, right? Feeling accepted is going to look and feel different. Physical safety is going to look and feel different, but safety is just as important, and emotional safety is part of safety. Um, so yeah, that's important. One thing I appreciated that you said was about, women wanting to feel, well, you didn't phrase it like this, but you said the sort of like idea of tucking away your sexuality, right? So some men
Yeah.
will be, well, that's threatening, so I'm just gonna like tuck it over here. She's not gonna want that. It's too much. It's too much.
And then,
I
then the
just
men can't figure out why they end up in the friend zone. Well, they've
Yes,
hidden their sexuality. The woman thinks, oh, he just wants to be friends.
yes. And I wanted to touch on that. Two things. One, so I call it sort of like the order of operations. When it comes to arousal, there are different studies and statistics on this, so don't take this with a grain of salt. But according to the research that I've read, it takes a woman, a female body, it takes a woman about 45 minutes to come to full physiological arousal. That means all systems go, everything's happening, all the blood flows in the right place. She is like really ready. 45
Ferrari.
minutes. Ferrari. It takes a man about 7 minutes to come to full physiological arousal. Like, he is like raring, he's ready to go. We can see a disparity there. Yes, there's a
Yeah.
disparity. She takes about 4 times longer to come to full arousal. Now, the average sexual encounter is about 20 minutes. So most of the time, she's not even really fully aroused during a sexual encounter. And that's okay. She doesn't have to be fully aroused every single time that you have sex. The point is that you want to ramp up, right? You want to start slow and ramp up. You want to ramp up. So the problem is not necessarily the way that men are touching women. I'm just going to use hands and fingers as my example, because that's a frequent one, as, foreplay type thing. You want to start way slower, way more soft, way more gentle than you ever have in your life to generate arousal in most women, most female bodies. That means touching her over her clothes, right? A lot of guys will just like rip off the clothes right away and do it like it looks in porn. And I can't tell you how many porn videos I've watched and cringed and thought, oh my God, ow. And it's not that that touch isn't wanted, it's that it's not wanted right away, right? You want to build the fire, right? You got to get the kindling before you do the logs. Let's start with the logs because it's not going to light. So that's one of the biggest things I kind of want to impress upon everyone, is that you want to
Go
start slow.
slower, warm
Or,
up,
and so
softer, more gentle. Yeah.
I teach a course on this called Please Her in Bed. And one of the things that I do is I take, those word clouds. So I took all the
Oh, yeah.
data, the
Like in a
responses from
cartoon. Yeah.
yes, and the ones that are mentioned over and over are really big. So for the ones about the men who were not good in bed, hard and fast were big, right? So fingering me too hard. fingering me too fast, using his hands too hard. What is it? I have these quotes. Jabbing me like they are stabbing me was one woman's response. Driving in too soon, it hurts when you're not ready and things aren't wet enough. I mean, we're all familiar with that. But the slow to start and then ramping up, that's one thing. And then the other thing, and I talk about this in my course, is how to set the stage, how to lead as a man in bed. And what I mean by that is basically saying out loud, I really want this to feel good for you. I always want to know if something doesn't feel good or hurts, to kind of like front load it, since we know this is women's top sex problem, to just say out loud, I really want this to feel good for you. I always want to know if something hurts or doesn't feel good. And by the way, I don't know how many men on the call are in relationships, but that's true no matter how long you've been in a relationship. Because there are women
Because
who,
things can change, right?
yes, there are women who've been in marriages for 20 years and haven't told their partners something hurts. And our bodies change over the course of our cycles and then over the course of our lives, right, as we go into perimenopause and menopause. So sometimes there